What's going on, everyone? It's another episode of the WVSports.com podcast. Once again, I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by the one and only Keenan Cummings. So, Mountaineers, they got 2 games left. Keenan, we are at our home finale of the 2024 season. Can you believe it? Time has flown, and in come the UCF Knights as West Virginia is 1 game away from bowl eligibility. And certainly speaking, things could get pretty bleak with a loss. So, Kino, just overall where you stand on your thoughts. I know you were very spirited, I think is the right word to use there, after the loss this past weekend to Baylor, about your thoughts on this game and how it is must win or bust, basically, for Neil Brown and company. So let's see where you're at a couple days later.
Yeah, same place. I think this is a must win for West Virginia. UCF is a 4-6 football team, and I think it's a reflection of kind of where West Virginia is at right now in terms of the national scope, that UCF's lost a lot of football games the second half of the year. They've struggled to find wins. And West Virginia is 2.5-point dogs at home to a 4-6 football team. That cannot happen. Neil Brown talked this week about, they haven't played well at home. We all know that. He kind of clarified some of his comments, about, playing tough teams at home, which I think was fair. Yeah, I do think some of that stuff that you can look into too much, but they have played more difficult games at home. They haven't won them, though, and he didn't make excuses for that. He owned that, which I think is a positive. And we're to the point now where, can West Virginia go to West Texas and get a win? Absolutely. Do you want to be forced to go to West Texas and get a win? No. And no one is hanging banners for West Virginia making a bowl game. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying right now. I am in no way saying that West Virginia making a bowl game makes this season a success or everybody's happy or anything like that. But if you don't make a bowl game, it's even more of a failure than what it already has become. And there's no way around it. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. I think everyone in that building knows that. We didn't set these expectations. So I want to make that clear. We weren't the ones saying this team's going to Arlington, or hoping for Arlington. We weren't the one saying this team's 9 wins, you want to go to 11 or find a way. This is the most talented or looks like a competitive roster. All the comments that were said in the preseason, that was in-house expectation set. The national media had this, or the Big 12 media had this team picked as 7th. I shot high on them. I thought they'd be 9-3, but most people had, I think the over under was 6.5?
6.5. Yep. I was
6.5. So it's not like, they're kind of right on expectations.
Vegas, man, they never miss.
Yeah, it's rare, but I think that's the disappointment. You set yourself up for this almost yourself, and you got to have belief in your program. In no way am I saying what they did is wrong. If you don't believe you're going to win, you're not going to win. It's pretty much as simple as that. You got to believe you have a good football team, and I think West Virginia was close in some games. It didn't happen. And here you are. You're 5-5. That popular phrase we keep using, a coin flip, that's what it's become. Big dab to 17-14 on the board. I think he coined that. But this is where we are, man. You gotta find a way on senior day against a UCF team that struggled to find a way to win this football game. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's where we're at.
Yeah. Let's start here for me. Go into the point of what this win or loss would mean. Bowl eligibility doesn't mean anything. Not after what you guys kind of went out and stated this summer, not out of the way you approached the season. Think back to week 1. That McAfee show was here. Like, the vibes were high, Keenan.
It's a deflated balloon now.
And I'll tell you what, as high as those vibes were, if they lose Saturday and they finish that home schedule the way they did, and they guarantee that they have to go on the road to beat Texas Tech to just finish 6-6, I'm not sure how much more of a 180 you could get from that point. And so I think a loss does much more damage than a win does good to this group, to this team.
Clearly.
I think if you were desperate before, I think you're begging and then some now if you're West Virginia, right? Like, you have to get this one. I'm not sure. It doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things, right? But it means something in terms of just to show that you can play at home against a UCF team, right? Like, this roster that you're playing from UCF, they're from Florida, Keenan. It's going to be 40 degrees, windy, possibly rainy, snowy-ish. Like, yuck. You think that you're not supposed to win that game, right? Like, I don't know. There's a lot that goes into it that we can get into, that we can overlook, but you're right. West Virginia has to win this game. There's nothing that's dodging that here.
I want to go back to this. We've had, Spence's like program feeling disrespected. Obviously what happened with the tweet and all that stuff. I would feel disrespected that you're home underdogs to a 4-6 UCF team. That's where the disrespect is. And I think West Virginia almost has to take that personal. You got to win this game. I know bowl eligibility doesn't mean a lot, but it means something to me. That's one thing I do disagree with you on. I think you got to go to a bowl. If you don't, I'm not like.
I don't mean it means nothing I just mean in terms of where we start.
I agree with you.
It means nothing. I think it's good for every program to want to go to a bowl game every year. Yes, but I think from where we were 2 months ago to where we are now, a bowl game means absolutely nothing.
No, yeah, in terms of that, absolutely. But I think that it's about pride at this point. You've been embarrassed, for lack of a better term. You have 3 straight double-digit losses at home. 3 straight. And 2 of them you really weren't even competitive in the second half. You had a chance at Baylor. You let it slip through your fingers. You don't get that back. It's gone. You got to find a way to win this football game. I'm sick of doing the biggest game of Neil Brown. We do that all the time. No, I'm done with that. This is just a point where this is about pride at this point. You got to strap them up and win this football game. And I know UCF's playing for the same thing. They're trying to save their season and go to a bowl. But you got this game at home on senior day with a senior class that features a lot of names everybody knows.
A lot of names everyone knows, and a lot of
people that have been very important to this program, whether it's been in wins or losses, whatever. They've played well. They've been very important to this program. This is about kind of setting the tone and finding a way to get a win that you really need to get. I don't know what more we can say about this game.
Yeah,
that's where we're at.
Let's get to UCF then. So the Knights have an interesting quarterback situation, to say the least. They've had 4 different guys at that spot.
And no injuries.
No injuries. And the big household name was KJ Jefferson, the Arkansas transfer. He just didn't work out, plain and simple. And now they are on Dylan Risk. And he's played well. He came in the BYU game, and then he beat Arizona 56-12, and he lost at Arizona State 35-31. But in that game, UCF did miss 2 field goals. So he had them in a position on the road to possibly beat an Arizona State team that is still contending at the top of this league right now. And so he has a 73% completion percentage, 625 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. He can run the ball a little bit too, 19 rushes for 75 net yards. He's the guy, Keenan, and obviously they're going to want to run the ball with RJ Harvey, who just look at these numbers real quick. 196 rushes, over 1,300 yards, 19 touchdowns on the ground. He's got 21 total touchdowns, Keenan. The next closest in the league has 13. That is a lot of production from him at that running back position. So they're going to want to run the ball, but they've gotten a lot better play out of that quarterback position with Rizk in there. And so I'm interested to see how this West Virginia team can handle it, because that defense last week, it was they were going up and down the field on them. And so, except for that third quarter, but I'm interested to see what kind of happens, especially from the start, because Baylor had like 2-minute drives for touchdowns early on there.
Yeah, I thought Harvey was special last year when West Virginia played him. He's gotten even better, which is hard at this stage of your career. He's playing at an elite level right now. And I think the game really, for West Virginia, you can throw everything else out. Offensively, defensively. I think West Virginia's got to stop the run. Now, UCF can throw the ball. They're better with Risk in that position. But that's a team that they want to run the football. They're second in the country in rushing. They're first in the Big 12, obviously. First Power 5, the number 1 Power 5 team in the country. It's a similar situation to last year. UCF had numbers very similar to that. They can throw the ball. They don't have Javon Baker this year, but they still have Kobe Hudson, some other guys they can get the football to. But it's going to come down to West Virginia stopping the run. The good thing for West Virginia is that is their strong suit. And if West Virginia can bottle up the play that they had for the first 3 drives of that Baylor game in the second half, they're going to have success. But if it's anything like the first half, it's going to be a nightmare. And really, that speaks to the bigger issue, Wesley. We're in game 10, and there's still absolutely zero consistency on the defensive side of the ball. We gave them all their praise after Cincinnati, but we even pointed out, Cincinnati still picked up quite a bit of yards, but they were in the right spot.
Sorsby kind of threw a grenade on himself there.
Yeah, they were in the right spots though, and I think for the most part they were somewhat at times against Baylor. Some of the things just can't happen though. Missed tackles, like the hitch play that they ran that ended up going for like a 45-yard touchdown was just embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, two guys were there. I don't even think they touched him.
If I'm UCF, I'm scouting how can I throw the ball 3 yards down the field and figure it out that way, because that's all Baylor did. They rarely – I mean, there were 2 touchdowns there in the first half where he threw a really good ball down the field, but for the most part it was run the ball, dink and dunk, and then make guys miss. And they were very good at it in West Virginia. Like those screenplays, you kept telling me, West Virginia, it's the same play every time.
They can't get off the block.
And they couldn't get off the block, and they wouldn't adjust to it. And so that's what I'm interested to see. Like, how do you have these week-to-week adjustments if you're West Virginia? Because you had a really good performance in terms of production against Cincinnati, and then it was a 180 and then some last week against Baylor. And so now, if you're Jeff Coons, this is your 3rd game. How do you adjust now with 2 games with 2 very different outcomes?
And yeah, you pointed out, well, how many times did I say, look, they're just throwing the ball in West Virginia. You can't get off a block. It was a thrown ball behind the line of scrimmage. West Virginia couldn't get off a block, and it turned into 8 or 9 yards. I mean, they'll take that all day. It's about like what Kansas State was doing. They were just throwing basically 8 to 9 yard handoffs to right behind the linebackers. I mean, if you make it easy for teams, they'll take advantage of it. And I think that has to get addressed. That comes down to physicality. You got to be able to shed blocks. You got to be able to make tackles. And really, until the last 2 games, that hasn't been as big of an issue for this defense. It's been other areas, but that's really cropped up the last 2 weeks. And I think UCF's going to do a lot of the same stuff. They're going to run the football, get the ball out quick. That's kind of what they do. And I think that West Virginia is going to need an answer for it, or you're going to see them kind of move up and down the field.
Yeah, let's switch sides of the ball. This UCF defense, injuries are kind of an overarching factor for this group. Brandon Adams, who is tied for the team lead in interceptions, has missed the last 2 games. And as you will hear in our interview with Brandon Helwig from UCF, that could cause trouble for them, and that he has missed time, and it is kind of a question mark if he will be back this week. They've also had to kind of move guys around. Deshaun Pace is one guy who's kind of had to move positions a little bit, but he has 48 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, also has 2 picks. Ethan Barr, he's a linebacker in the middle. He leads them with 53 tackles. A couple other guys up and down this roster, but 17 total sacks on this season, Keenan, which is 10th. And West Virginia and UCF are the 2 worst teams in the Big 12 in third down conversion percentage on defense. So that's something to look out for as well. But if you're Garrett Green, this is your last home game. What are you looking for from him? And what I would assume is going to be a pretty emotional day for him.
Yeah, I think you just get Garrett to play Garrett's game. I think West Virginia's going to have chances to attack them in the secondary. I think that that's an area that you can throw the ball on them. Need to be able to throw the ball. I thought they did a pretty good job with that last week. I know the final numbers didn't look as great, but I thought they did throw the ball pretty effectively at times.
Other than the pick, I would say Garrett was pretty good. And I will say to all the people that were calling for Nico to start last week, I don't think you're even in that game with Nico at quarterback.
And it goes back to what we're talking about, like what he can do with his legs. That's not a knock on Nico, but a lot of the offense in that game was generated off Garrett. Getting out of the pocket, running, extending plays, and that's just not there with Nico. He can run the ball, but it's not like that. And I think that gave you a chance. That last drive is perfect, Garrett. That's he just made things happen. The last drive before the half is what I'm talking about. That's all Garrett. He makes that happen, and they don't get that with Nico in that situation. And that's not a knock on Nico. They're different players. I think that's what we spoke about last week, though. I think that for me, though, it's not about Garrett Green in this game. To me, it's about running the football. West Virginia needs to be able to run the football in this game.
Especially without Traylon Ray.
Yes, they need to be able to run the football, and then when they take those shot plays, they need to hit them, because that's been an issue all year. They've not been able to connect on those. They did a better job last week, and at times did pretty well at Cincinnati.
I would argue, push back a little bit, that their best offense last week when throwing the ball down the field was drawing PI flags more than anything. I would say that's where they're most successful. I think Traylon drew a couple, Robinson might have drawn one, but like Justin Robinson, he's going to have to step up, and I'm not sure
Has
that's
to.
a secret to anyone, but he's going to have to seriously step up. Hudson Clement, I know he was coming back from injury. He's going to have to play better. I mean, just this wide receiver room as a whole, I think they've been a little underwhelming in how we thought they would kind of continue to progress and take that step forward. It just seems like they've kind of flatlined in a sense this year. They haven't really continued to get better and better and better. And I think you're seeing that to an extent, especially with this passing game. And it's a little bit limited because your receivers aren't playing up to the standard that you thought they would be here in Game 11.
Yeah, and the real loss with Traylon Ray, too, is he's just so good at getting open against man coverage.
Yep.
If you look at a lot of those third downs, they'll look for him. You know, he's a very good man beater, especially on some of those out-breaking routes and breaking routes. He's really good. And he's gotten a lot better, you know, from last year. And I agree with Neil. I think he has a chance to be a very good player by the time this thing's all said and done. Big loss for them in the passing game. I know they don't throw the football a lot. You know, if you're just looking at stats, the numbers are a little underwhelming, but he was really starting to come on. So it's a shame, but they're going to have to adjust.
And I want to go back to real quick that last drive before the first half that you mentioned, kind of a microcosm of who Garrett is, right? I think even if you kind of break it down to a deeper extent, there was that play where he kind of rolled out right, and it looked like he had 15-ish yards to run. He throws the ball incomplete. And then the next play where it looks like he should throw it, he decides to run. I think if you really kind of dive deep into that drive, I think you kind of nail it there. That's who Garrett is sometimes the decision-making isn't just there. Sometimes he runs when he shouldn't. Sometimes he throws when he should run. And it's the beauty and the beast of Garrett Green. And I personally think that Garrett's given a lot to this program. I think that he should be recognized for it. I know that this year didn't go the way anyone expected, especially him. But I think he deserves to get his flowers for the amount of work he's put in, for sticking with this program through quarterback chaos his first couple of years here. And I hope for his sake that he's able to kind of have a good day Saturday to kind of close the book in a positive manner.
Yep, I think that sums it up. You know, I'm just going to skip. We don't really need to talk about keys to this game.
I think it's the same keys as it is every week, right?
I've already outlined
run the ball, take care of the ball, and stop the run on the other side.
Just make some plays. Be in the right spot on defense. Make some plays. You know, it makes a big difference if you're able to generate a turnover or two. And you're going against a redshirt freshman quarterback who I know has played well, but he's on the road. Shake him up a little bit. Bring some pressure. Heat him up. You know, try to force some turnovers. Game pick, you already know mine. If you read my 3-1 column, I made it very clear. I made it clear on the show last week who I was going to pick.
You made it clear Sunday morning who you were going to
I'm taking West Virginia in this game. I'm passionate about this for the sake of show that there's some fight left in this team. I understand that UCF is playing better football right now. They're 4-6. You're at home. You're senior day. You're playing for bowl eligibility. There's no excuses. Absolutely no excuses not to win this game. I don't care if you're an underdog. This is about pride to me, and I think that West Virginia needs to show some in this game. So I'm picking them out of that. If they lose this one, I'm picking Texas Tech.
You gotta say a score. We've done this for too long for you to not.
I'm not giving. I'm just West Virginia.
West Virginia, maybe West Virginia by 1 million. But for me, I've been kind of going back and forth, truthfully. I mean, just looking at the numbers and how UCF's competed, they've played with some of these really good teams in the league. Lost by 3 at Iowa State, hung with Arizona State, hung for a little bit with BYU. So that kind of gives me some pause when thinking about West Virginia. I also think that what UCF does well, West Virginia does well, and that's running the ball and stopping the run. But I'm with you, Keenan. I just think that there's a lot of guys that this will mean a lot to. And give me West Virginia. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know.
I feel like you got to, man. If you can't
win this game, that's what I'm at. I'm like, if you can't win this game,
there's concerns.
There's more.
I mean, there is concerns already.
There's concerns now, but if you can't win this game, it's like a 12-alarm fire or whatever. However many alarms can go off, like that's how many alarms are going off.
Yeah, so that I got West Virginia.
Score to be determined until Saturday afternoon. That's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, score whatever it is. Just West Virginia. Yeah, what I'm taking.
So we could come back in here and say we totally guessed the score, right?
Yeah, we'll just revisionist history. It'll be all right.
Exactly. You got anything else, or are we going to get to this interview?
Nah, we're good.
All right, we're going to kick into an interview with Brandon Helwig. Stick around for that to learn all about, and that interview will start right now. It is our pleasure to be joined by Brandon Helwig from the UCF sports site, and he is going to help us learn all about the night. So, Brandon, appreciate you taking the time. First off, seems like UCF and West Virginia are in somewhat similar spots at this point of the year. Both fan bases had high expectations, and then here we are, and neither team is bowl eligible with 2 games to go. So, just kind of the overall vibe of UCF and how their season has gone with 2 games to play.
Yeah, I think as you said, very similar to West Virginia. I mean, both schools I think might have been 7th and 8th or somewhere in that range in the Big 12 preseason poll. But in terms of the fan base and actually in terms of the coaching staff, in terms of Gus Malzahn, their expectations were much, much higher than that. If you go back to last season, which was UCF's first in the Big 12, they were the only school of the 4 newcomers to reach a bowl game. They finished 6 and 7. They lost the bowl to Georgia Tech. UCF starting quarterback John Rice Plumlee, he was injured for a good chunk of the middle part of the season. So, in all honesty, I thought it was a pretty good first year. I mean, all things considered, with the step up of competition. But it was not a good year according to Gus Malzahn. He had never had a losing season ever in his career. So, his offseason, goal was to build a team that he thought could compete for a Big 12 championship. So he made changes at coordinator. He brought in Ted Roof to coordinate the defense. Had a lot of big time additions in the transfer portal. The biggest name being former Arkansas quarterback KJ Jefferson. So I mean, internal expectations were to compete, at least to be getting to the month of November where you're playing games that matter to reach the Big 12 championship, and that just hasn't been the case. KJ Jefferson, I mean, to put it bluntly, he was a bust. I mean, he was terrible. He was not a good quarterback. I really don't know where things went awry with him. I know his last season in Arkansas wasn't as good as his year 2 years ago, but just was not accurate. Wasn't a great runner. It just didn't seem like he was a guy that was a 5th year 3-year starter in the SEC. Just didn't look like it. So eventually they made a quarterback change. They're now on their 4th quarterback. The other quarterbacks really didn't light the world on fire. But the 4th quarterback, who was kind of an afterthought in all this, Dylan Risk, he kind of got put in garbage time, a few weeks ago in the BYU game. He looked amazing, and he's been the starter ever since. And I mean, if there's a sense of optimism for UCF right now, it's the fact that maybe they found the quarterback of the future in Dylan Risk, who's played really well. Having started the last two games for UCF. But yeah, like West Virginia, just kind of in a do or die situation. They got to win. UCF's got to win out. They got to beat West Virginia, and then they got to beat Utah at home on Black Friday just to reach a bowl game, which is not where UCF thought they would be right now.
You mentioned the quarterbacks, and that's crazy to me. How many quarterbacks they've been through. Safe to assume that Risk is going to start this game, first of all, and second of all, what has been the difference with him? What has made him play so well in his opportunities?
Oh, yeah. Dylan Risk is definitely the starting quarterback. I think, why the coaching staff couldn't identify this earlier is kind of the $1 million question right now. I think a lot of people think Gus Malzahn just kind of pigeonholes himself into trying to find these Cam Newton clones, these guys that are going to be like Nick Marshall, just kind of those types of quarterbacks where he's looking for like running back ability, first before he looks at passing ability. Because, they probably spent too much time on really he was really the second quarterback. They went with Ja'Cory Brown. He was at Miami last year, a transfer, kind of in that, Cam Newton, whatever that mold is. And just, he's not a good passer. Like he can't read defenses. He's not accurate throwing the ball. Just all those things that should come first when you evaluate quarterbacks seem like they come last when it comes to Gus Malzahn's decision on quarterbacks. But that's the thing that Dylan Risk, like, he wasn't like your prototypical Gus Malzahn type of quarterback. Because he can scamper, he can scramble for some yards, but he's not really known as that running type of quarterback. But yeah, just the fact that he can do the quarterback stuff, which is kind of like, it's asinine to say that, but he could actually read the field. He can identify which receiver is going to be open, because it seemed like the other guys were just looking for one read, and if either they try to force it in there or they just take off and run. That was basically all they were ever doing. They weren't scanning the field to see, they couldn't read the field to see who might be open. But he's doing his percentage rate, I think, is over 70%. He's very, very accurate now. And let's say he's still pretty, he's new. He's a redshirt freshman. He hasn't played a lot of football yet. He had a real critical pick six when they were backed up inside their end zone, which is one of those plays that against Arizona State 2 weeks ago that, really UCF should have won that game. I don't know why they were passing out of the end zone. I mean, that's a debate, but they did, and he threw a critical pick six. But other than that, he's played really well, here for UCF in these last two starts.
Does the offense change at all? With him, has it changed, or is it the same offense? He's just running it more efficiently.
Well, I think it changed a little bit, because that also coincided with, what we've been told. Gus Malzahn was UCF's offensive coordinator and play caller, through most of this season, and then coinciding with Risk starting at quarterback, he handed off play calling to Tim Harris Jr., who was, who had been the offensive coordinator in title, but, really wasn't running the offense. So we've seen a little bit, changes in terms of just, it seems like Gus kind of has his plays, just kind of wacky gadget plays that just often make no sense and don't work, or just constant substitutions. Like, guys are running off the field, running on and off like every play. And it's like, well, why don't you just keep the same rotation and keep going? Like, there's all these head scratching Gus plays we see sometimes. Some of that came back a little bit in the Arizona State game, trying to go, really critical late in the game. UCF's got to drive and score to try to win the game. And they run out a wildcat play on third down. And, and then Arizona State calls timeout because they want to be ready for it. And then, they come out with the same, alignment. They didn't even switch. You said didn't even switch up what they were doing. It was stuffed. Then on fourth down, they do it again. It was stuffed. Just some things that seemed like it was Gus still kind of, drawing it up like he usually does. So I don't know. It's been a little bit, you go back to that Arizona game a couple weeks ago at home, the space game, UCF, they blew out Arizona. Everything was working well, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see who's calling plays. I mean, I don't know if we'd ever get, full honesty, full transparency of who's really calling plays or not, but it should be Tim Harris. But of course, Gus is the head coach. I mean, whether he was pressured or not to give up play calling, I'm not totally sure. I think he was, but we'll see what happens on Saturday, I guess.
I feel like it's inconsiderate to talk about this UCF offense without talking about RJ Harvey, obviously. So the numbers speak for themselves, but what's he brought to this team just in general, maybe more than just being a running back on the field?
Probably the biggest tragedy of this season, just kind of not being up to expectations, that UCF is wasting just such a legendary season for a player who will go down as one of the all-time greats in UCF history. I mean, he's an amazing football player. Whenever the UCF Hall of Fame gets together, whatever, he's on the first he's going to be a future UCF Hall of Famer. He's definitely probably has an argument to be a top two or three all-time UCF running back. It's kind of hard to dethrone Kevin Smith, who in 2007 nearly broke the NCAA single-season rushing yard record, I think finished number 2 all-time in the record books. But other than that season, it's just been a fantastic career for RJ. Incredible story. He's an Orlando native. He didn't initially come to UCF. He actually went to Virginia to play quarterback. That's how it goes. Guys, they really get recruited for other positions, and they're usually the best player on a high school team is often playing quarterback. And some of these guys, I want to play quarterback, but maybe that's not going to translate to the college level like they were when they played high school. So he went to Virginia, and they moved him to running back pretty quickly. And so I think he was like, if I was going to play running back, I just would have gone to UCF out of high school. So he transferred after his first semester at Virginia, and ever since, I mean, he's been fantastic. He had to overcome an ACL injury. He was in line, I think it was 2021. He was in line to be UCF starting running back that season. He was still kind of learning the position because he played quarterback his whole life, and he tore his ACL in August in preseason and missed the entire year. But he came back. I mean, the fact that he has the speed that he does, he's able to, this vision, his patience, his elusiveness. I mean, we'll see how it goes with, the battle. I think he should have been all Big 12 running back last year. I know there was a lot of depth the running back spot in the league. There's still a lot of great running backs in the league this year, but I really think he is deserving, and hopefully he is, an all Big 12, first team selection. I think he's that good. And like I said, it's a shame that UCF has, a talent like that, and potentially is going to have, maybe one of their worst seasons since the winless year in 2015 in terms of being the first team ever since that team to not reach a bowl game unless they can find a way to win their last two.
On the note of him and other people in this offense, obviously the weather in Morgantown will be a little different than the weather down in Orlando, I would assume. I know Gus talked about it a little bit earlier in the week, but do you think that might change things schematics-wise as far as what they want to do? I know UCF wants to run the ball. Obviously, they were the best rushing team in the league by numbers, but do you think things will change perhaps based on the weather conditions there?
Yeah, I don't know if they'll change because I think UCF likes to run the ball. They're going to lean on RJ Harvey anyway, whether it was 85 degrees or 35 degrees. I don't think that game plan really changes much. I'm just more interested to see how overall as a team, how some of these players can handle the conditions. I mean, we'll see what it's like on the field on Saturday. It may be upper 30s, low 40s, but I mean, I see the forecast. It could be raining. That kind, the rain and the cold mixed together. I've been meaning to go back and look. I know off the top of my head, I've been in a lot of these road games over the last 20 or so years. UCF does not, to be expected, UCF doesn't play a whole lot of cold weather games, but when they haven't fared very well. I guess that's to be expected, or is not surprising when you got a team made up of mostly Florida guys that they're not used to playing in weather like this. So that's personally, that's my concern because I'm traveling and I've never really driven in snow before. If I'm going to be on the field, if it's going to be cold and wet, I'm kind of worried myself. I don't know how these guys are going to handle it, but like Gus said earlier this week, you can't practice it. You can't really prepare for it. So that's kind of the wild card. I'm waiting to see how this team just overall, how they kind of perform when the weather conditions may not be ideal.
You obviously mentioned they're throwing the ball a little bit better. What is their skill set in terms of the weapons that Risk can throw to? Are they equipped to push the ball down the field? How do they try to attack when they're throwing the ball?
With the Risk, it has opened up the passing game completely. Kobe Hudson had been, he's UCF's top receiver. Honestly, you could say he was UCF's only receiver, just because, like I said, with these other guys, they were looking for Kobe, and if it wasn't going to Kobe, it wasn't going to anybody. Very few receivers were getting involved other than Kobe Hudson, the first, 7-8 games of this season. But since Dylan Risk got in there, he's been able to distribute the ball a lot more. The biggest benefactor has been a player named Jacoby Jones, who's a senior transfer from Ohio. He had, a pair of back-to-back 100-yard receiving games recently. He's been a nice player that's come on lately. UCF is dealing with I think maybe their third or fourth receiver, Javarius Johnson. He was a transfer from Auburn in his final year of eligibility. I'm not sure what his injury was, but it happened at Arizona State. It looked like an ACL type injury. They carted him off. I'd be shocked. I'm pretty sure he's done for the year after how things looked on the field at Arizona State. So they'll be down a receiver there. But yeah, between Kobe Hudson, who's hoping to get, some NFL looks, and Jacoby Jones, it has looked up. It has been a little bit better in terms of getting more receivers involved now that Dylan Risk is the starting quarterback.
Defensively, I know you mentioned that there were possibly some injuries earlier. So if you could just give a rundown of injuries on that defensive side of the ball and the impact it might have.
Yeah, the biggest issue right now is it was in that, the back end in that secondary. Their number one corner, Brandon Adams, he's been here for 5 years, started a bunch of games. He's been out with an undisclosed injury the last 2 games, has not played, didn't even travel to Arizona State, 2 weeks ago. And he's already accepted an invitation to the Senior Bowl. So you kind of put 2 and 2 together. It's shaping up to be an inconsequential year in terms of just, UCF just fighting to reach a bowl game. And he's already got a ticket to the Senior Bowl. So if he's got an injury, I kind of doubt he's going to rush himself back. I think we're at that point of the year where, knowing the season isn't what they expected, guys who maybe are thinking about, the future and the next level may not be playing. So I don't know. He may be out anyway with this injury, but I'm not expecting him to play. The other guy, UCF starting nickel, Braden Marshall, one of the starters, he hasn't played really the last couple weeks either. I'm not, UCF doesn't really release injury, specific nature. I know it's something with his leg, but I don't know what his status is. He may be out again, so they're kind of thin. Linebacker Deshaun Pace, who had been at Cincinnati the past few years, I don't know if you guys remember his name or not, one of their better defensive players. He's been playing linebacker for UCF, but he's one of those tweener types. He can kind of move around. He's been playing a lot of nickel since Braden Marshall got injured, so he can kind of move around. They've been kind of trying to plug a hole with him, but that's the biggest issue. Just defensively, it's been okay at times. Just what the issues are exactly, I don't know. I know they fired Ted Roof. Guys did that kind of late season thing that a lot of coaches do when the season's not going. To West Virginia went through the same thing this year, where you kind of feel like you got to make some changes, and they fired Ted Roof. I don't know if defense was really their biggest issue. But you make a change for the sake of making a change. They Addison Williams, who had been their defensive coordinator last season and had been demoted, now he's back as DC again. They did reasonably well early against Arizona State this 2 weeks ago. It was just they had a punt blocked return for a touchdown, and then they had a pick six when they were he tried to signal a freshman, try to signal for a fair catch. I don't know what he was doing. He caught the ball and then he ran it out of the end zone. I don't know what he was thinking. He kind of looked like he was trying to, I don't know what he was. It was like on the half-yard line. And so UC was backed up all the way there. And then, Dylan Risk trying to pass out of the end zone on the next play, throws a pick six. So that's 14 points right there. That is not the defense's fault. So if you take those away, I think the defense played well. Just late in the game when, maybe they're thin in some areas, Arizona State was able to kind of wear them out and have some touchdown drives late that kind of, propelled them to a win. But I wouldn't say, the defense it was really their fault that they lost the Arizona State game. But yeah, we'll see. Like I said, I'm just curious to see how these Florida boys, a large number of them, handle this West Virginia cold weather.
What would you say for the unit as a whole? If you're going to attack them, where are they weak? Where are they strong?
Yeah, well, sometimes it kind of varies game to game. I'd say they're probably their biggest weakness is probably the secondary, just with the injury issues and just knowing how they've been burned through the air at various times, especially now we're at a point of the season where some of these guys in the secondary, they're playing a lot of reps. They're not being subbed out just because the guys that they would sub out for maybe are hurt. That'd probably be where, if Garrett Green is able to get a passing game going, I think that's the bigger area. UCF improved a lot stopping the run. That was their Achilles heel a season ago. I think West Virginia ran for a ton of yards. Maybe 300. They ran for a lot of yards on UCF last year. They've done a lot better this year in terms of stopping the run. They got better linebacker talent than they had a year ago. Some of the defensive line has improved in that area. But I'd say that'd be the area to watch. And I don't know how conducive it'll be to throwing the football based on the weather, especially if it's wet. But I think if West Virginia can find a way to get a passing game going, that could spell trouble for UCF.
And then what about keys to victory? If I were to tell you UCF wins, what would you say the because is in that sentence?
Well, I think it's like kind of what we talked about earlier is RJ Harvey, getting him going. I think, the same could always be said for every game this season. UCF, if RJ Harvey can get his yards, can rush for, 100 plus 150 yards, which I think he's averaging 130 something this year, it'll probably be a pretty good day for UCF. But that's what I'm going to look for. If they can take RJ Harvey out of it and kind of force Dylan Risk to beat him through the air in a cold environment, possibly a wet football, if you can take RJ Harvey out of it, it might be a long day for UCF. I know Dylan Risk, he's looked really good in his 2 starts, but then again, he's a redshirt freshman. He has very limited experience. He had his first road experience at Arizona State. It wasn't the most, intimidating atmosphere. I'm expecting a much better atmosphere at West Virginia, much louder. The weather, like I said, could hamper. Like Dylan Risk, he's from South Florida. He's from the Fort Lauderdale area. So I don't know if he's even seen snow. I don't know, but so it'll be an atmosphere for him too that he's going to have to get used to. But that'd be the area. If West Virginia, if they can find a way to stop RJ Harvey, I would think they have a pretty good chance.
And then what about a prediction? If I had to put you on the spot here. I know Keenan and I have talked about a lot this year for West Virginia games. It's kind of been a coin flip, and I'm sure we are similar there feeling with this game. So how do you feel this one goes for UCF and West Virginia?
That's really hard to say because, I think, I always trend to be more optimistic towards UCF, and it was kind of like, well, I thought this game was going to go that way, and it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. It's tough just because we're late in the year, and I kind of curious. I'm not saying guys are like going through the motions like they want to lose. I'm not saying that, but it's late in the year. It's going to be cold. I'm curious to see what we see like in terms of the energy and just how motivated I don't know if that's kind of just if it even means anything or not, but how you see the vibe of a team late in the year. It's kind of different depending on the situation. Like, are guys thinking ahead? Like, are they thinking about transfer portal, or are they wondering what the coaching situation is for UCF? Because there's a lot of rumors about Gus retiring. I mean, how motivated are they really to get to a bowl game? I don't know. I mean, we'll find out, I guess, on Saturday to see, what the team looks like. But yeah, I mean, nothing would surprise me. I think UCF has talent. I mean, this isn't a team where, they're not very good in terms of, talent on the field. And so you can kind of understand why they've been losing. I think the most frustrating thing, if you go back and look at this season for UCF, they have talent. They haven't had, every team has injury issues, like I said, with the secondary. I mean, that's going on with every team right now. But in terms of some of the key positions, they haven't had injuries at quarterback. RJ Harvey's been healthy. Like, a lot of the key guys have been healthy, so it's not for a lack of talent why they've struggled. I think when you look at coaching decisions, player development, coaching, evaluation decisions on what quarterback they should play, there's been a lot of head scratch. That's what drives UCF fans insane, is some of these decisions that made by Gus in the course of a game that just make no sense. And you go back and look to see why you lost the game. You can pick out 3, 4, 5 things like, why did Gus do this at this point in time? I know you do that when you lose. You don't do that when you win. Maybe things pay off. Some decisions, there was Arizona State game. UCF was trying to kick a long field goal. They're up by 3, and they have a backup field goal kicker who's kind of untested or unproven at the longer lengths, and they try to kick, like a 50-something yard field goal. I'm like, well, even if he goes in, you're still only winning by 6. Arizona State's going to get the ball, and they're going to march right down the defensive side. They're going to march right down. They're going to score a touchdown anyway. So adding 3 isn't going to, you should just go for it. It was like, whatever it was, it wasn't that, I can't remember, it was 4th and 3 or whatever it was. They should have just gone for it and they had to win it. They had to get a touchdown to potentially go up by 2 possessions to win the game. They try to kick a field goal. Of course, he misses it. Arizona marches right down the field, scores, and that was kind of the end of that one. But so it's one of those things where it just kind of been a frustrating year that if UCF fans kind of feel like if there was better decisions across the board, maybe they'd have 2 or 3, 4 more wins at this point. So yeah, I don't even know what your question was. I'm kind of rambling on, but
no, you're good. You're good.
It's one of those games where, I mean, nothing would really surprise me because I know UCF have the talent to go into Morgan. I know West Virginia, you guys are kind of dealing with similar issues as well. They have the talent to win, but will they is the bigger question.
Gotcha. Well, we'll wrap it up there, Brandon. We appreciate you taking the time. I know our listeners do as well. Be sure to give him a follow on Twitter. Give him a look out because he will also be looking at the Mountaineers just like we're looking at the Knights. So we do appreciate you listening, and this is the WVSports.com podcast.